Welcome back to America's Fractured Politics. We have 7 months to take the first steps towards saving what's left of democracy, not in some abstract historical sense, but on the literal calendar that's in front of us. 7 months before another national decision point that will tell us whether the system we grew up trusting still has a pulse or whether it's already too captured and too corroded to function. Before we talk about what to do, we have to be honest about what not to do, because a lot of what passes for engagement right now is really just ritual. It keeps us busy. It keeps us informed. It can even make us feel morally awake. But it doesn't move power. It doesn't change outcomes. And if we're serious about defending what's left of this experiment, we have to stop confusing those rituals with real participation. For starters, we have to stop checking polls every day and pretending that's political involvement. A poll is not an action. It's a snapshot of what other people might do. Watching that number go up or down doesn't register a voter, doesn't persuade a neighbor, doesn't protect a single ballot. When we refresh the polling like it's a stock ticker, we're not acting, we're spectating. We're sitting in the stands, staring at the scoreboard, telling ourselves we're part of the team. We also have to stop treating online candidate arguments as if they were organizing. You know the drill. Hours of back and forth about who's electable, who betrayed whom, who's a sellout, who's secretly on the other side. It feels intense. It feels like it matters. But almost no one is actually persuaded by those exchanges. The energy that could have gone into a phone bank or a canvas or a registration drive evaporates into a comment thread. It's politics as performance instead of politics as work. And we have to stop swinging in between rage and numbness and pretending that emotional whiplash is a plan. Anger can be useful when it's challenged, when it has a target and a structure. Unchanneled anger brings hot and then burns out. Apathy can be understandable when you're exhausted, but when it hardens, it becomes an excuse to stand back and watch. Neither of those states by themselves builds power. Neither of them protects a single institution. If we truly believe the system is in danger, and it is, then we have to stop waiting for some outside force to step in and fix it. We have already watched courts look away, agencies defanged or captured, a Congress that shrugs at behavior that would once have been unthinkable. The pattern is familiar now. Outrage, hearings, maybe a report, then nothing. Hoping that the same set of institutions that failed last time will swoop in and rescue us this time is not strategy. It's denial. That's why we need to be honest about the language we use. Norms is one of those words we lean on because it sounds serious and reassuring. Norms are just habits that people use to respect. They are not self-enforcing. They don't have any power if the people inside the system decide they don't care. So it's no longer enough to say our norms are under threat. The real question is, who's actually willing to enforce any rules at all? Who's willing to say no and make it stick? We also need to let go of this comforting story that the guardrails held last time. Maybe some of them did, but barely. But the people who tried to bulldoze through them took notes. They learned which officials caved and which ones held. They learned where state law is vague, where certification procedures are vulnerable, where intimidation of election workers is possible without obvious legal ramifications. They tested the system. They mapped its weak points. And they have spent the time since then rewriting laws and procedures in their favor. They are still in office. They are still organizing. They did not pack up and go home after that one attempt failed. We can't keep telling ourselves there's going to be some automatic backlash that brings everything back into balance. There is no law of politics that says every abuse of power is met with an equal and opposite wave of outrage. Sometimes the outrage never comes. Sometimes people adapt. Sometimes they tune out. History is full of systems that did not crumble under their own weight. They just hardened into something worse. Waiting for the inevitable backlash is another way of waiting for someone else to do our work for us. And then there's the phrase, the country isn't ready for that. We use it to explain why bold action is impossible, why we can't push harder, why we have to stay cautious and incremental. But look at how the authoritarian right operates. They don't ask whether the country is ready for court packing or voter suppression or defiance of subpoenas. They move. They seize ground. They cement their gains. Then they worry about how to spin it. They act first and manage opinion later. Meanwhile, we're waiting for a poll to give us permission to defend the basics of self-government. We also have to retire the phrase, "this isn't who we are." It's comforting and it's wrong. For a large slice of this country, this is exactly who we are. The cruelty, the contempt for pluralism, the longing for a strong man, that's not an accident. It's not a glitch. It's something millions of people actively want. Saying this isn't who we are doesn't change them. It changes us. It lulls us into underestimating how deep the problem runs. It lets us feel morally superior without taking responsibility for confronting that reality. Another habit we need to break is treating politics as a form of entertainment. Cable news, TikTok clips, YouTube breakdowns, long articles, even podcasts like this one. They can help us understand what's happening. They can keep us informed. But none of that by itself pressures a single elected official. None of it shifts a single rule. Consuming politics is not the same as doing politics. It's useful or I wouldn't be producing this content at all. But we have to be honest about what it is. It's preparation, not participation. At some point, we have to step away from the screen and do basic concrete work. That starts very close to home. If we're serious about defending democracy, we have to learn how our state and local governments actually function. Most people don't know who runs their election office, who sits on their county board of supervisors, who controls their school board, who actually drafts the voting rules that shape turnout and access. But those are the people who decide whether an election is fair, whether a ballot is counted, whether a community is silenced. The presidency gets the headlines. The local clerk can quietly tilt the playing field. So we would begin by finding out who those people are and what they're doing. We'd show up where decisions are being made, in school board meetings, in county board meetings, in state legislative hearings, instead of only showing up in comment sections. We track the bills and resolutions that never trend on social media, but have enormous consequences for how voting works where we live. Then we join something that already exists. There are organizations in almost every state and community working on voting rights, election protection, and key local races. They don't need us to invent a brand new movement from scratch. They need bodies. They need time. They need people willing to be bored sometimes, willing to sit through the trainings and the planning sessions, and then to get out and knock on doors or make calls. We show up to those meetings and make them part of our weekly schedule, not something we squeeze in when the news cycle gets scary enough. To the extent we're able, we donate too, not just in one big burst when a dire email hits our inbox, but in small regular amounts to the places that are doing real legal and organizing work. Local journalism that exposes voter suppression, legal defense funds that challenge abuses in court, grassroots organizations that register voters and defend their rights. Those are pressure points. Instead of dumping money into the national party machine and hoping it trickles down, we'd give directly to candidates and groups where we can see the impact. We'd pick a few targets and support them steadily. We'd also commit to having the conversations we've been avoiding. That means talking politics with the people in our lives who might actually listen, the non-voters who think it doesn't matter, the low-information voters who only catch headlines, the people who are drifting toward authoritarian talking points, because that's all they hear. This doesn't mean screaming at relatives at Thanksgiving or trying to convert the most hardcore believers. It means refusing to treat politics as taboo in spaces where silence only helps the worst ideas go unchallenged. If some people are hopeless, fine, move on and find somebody else. But don't let the fear of awkwardness keep you out of every conversation that might matter. We have to accept that if we do this, some people will label us too political or obsessed or partisan. That's okay. Standing up for basic democratic rules is more important than being seen as calm, neutral, or detached. The expectation that you can defend a threatened system without ever making anyone uncomfortable is another fantasy we need to let go of. To make this real, we'd set actual goals for ourselves, not vague intentions, but numbers. How many voters did I help register this month? How many doors did I knock on? How many calls did I make? How many meetings do I attend? How much do I donate, even if the amount is small? We measure our politics by actions taken, not by content consumed or opinions expressed. And we'd acknowledge that these actions are going to cost us something. Time, money, focus, emotional energy. You can do a lot even if you don't have money, but you can't do anything if you're not willing to give up some comfort. We'd stop expecting democracy to be defended at no personal cost. We'd stop waiting for the moment that feels perfectly convenient or the candidate who perfectly inspires us. In the time we have left to shore up what's left of this system, we'd retire the phrase, someone should do something, and replace it with, I will do this one thing, or these two things, and then follow through. Because right now, too many of us are acting like spectators instead of participants. We move through our weeks as if nothing essential depends on what we do. This week, this month, this year, we let the sense of crisis wash over us, then recede, and then we go back to scrolling. But something does depend on what we do. It always has. The quiet decisions at the margins add up. I know all of this sounds prescriptive, maybe even like a lecture, but I'm aware of that. But I'm also looking at how much despair I see, especially in the places where we talk most openly. The Substack essays in the comment threads, the group chats, the spaces where people admit how frightened and exhausted they are. And it feels like the right time to say gently but clearly, despair can't be the last step. If we stop there, they win by default. The people working to entrench an authoritarian oligarchy are not throwing up their hands. They are not losing themselves in hopelessness. They are methodically taking over school boards, state legislatures, county commissions, courts. They are training candidates. They are rewriting the rules. They are investing for the long haul. If they are not giving up, we can't either. So take this in the spirit it's offered, not as judgment from above, but as a reminder from someone who feels the same dread you do and doesn't want us to drown in it. A reminder that democracy survives when more of us move from watching to doing, from commenting to organizing, from waiting for rescue to becoming, in small imperfect ways, our own backstop. Let's keep up the fight until we end this authoritarian oligarchy, not because it will be quick, and not because victory is guaranteed, but because there is no other responsible choice. It will take years. It will be uneven. There will be losses. But if we want any change at all, of living in a country where self-government is more than a slogan, this is the battle we have to undertake. This has been America's Fractured Politics. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope to see you next time.